He had no visitors, no letters, no one waiting outside. His name faded from headlines, his voice forgotten in courtrooms. For years, cell 314 was where he lived, ate and waited until the date arrived. But when asked for his final request, he didn't ask for a priest, not for a last meal, not even for forgiveness. He said only one thing: I want to see my dog. Guards exchanged glances. Paperwork was signed. And far from the prison's barbed wire, in a shelter where time moved slower, a brown dog with sad eyes lifted his head as if sensing something. His name was Kilo, and he remembered everything. They had once been inseparable. The man had raised him from a pup, fed him from empty hands, sheltered him through storms, and lost him when life fell apart. Now, as the clock ticked and the world remained indifferent, that single request pulled two broken lives back together. What happened when they met, no one expected. Not the guards, not the warden, not even the man himself. Because that final wish didn't just shake a prison. It shook something deeper. Cell 314 had become more than just a holding space. It was his world. The gray walls never changed. The cot creaked the same way every night. The air always smelled like bleach and silence. He had stopped marking time long ago. What was the point? His name was rarely spoken. Inmates whispered about him but kept their distance. The guards treated him with routine, neither cruelty nor warmth, just mechanical exchanges of trays, brief nods, and key turns. The man didn't speak much, didn't ask for privileges, didn't protest his sentence. He accepted the weight of what he had done, though no one really knew the full story, just a version stamped on court papers. The day he was informed that his execution date had been finalized, he didn't react. He just nodded and returned to his bunk. Only when asked about a final request did something stir in his eyes. He leaned forward, voice low but clear. I want to see my dog. The officer blinked. Your dog? He nodded. His name's Kilo. Haven't seen him in years. The request was unusual, but not against protocol. The form was filed. In a quiet shelter miles away, a brown dog sat in a corner kennel, old but alert. When his name was spoken softly by a visiting volunteer, his ears perked up, as if somewhere deep inside he already knew. Kilo had waited in silence for years, not in chains like his former companion, but in something just as invisible, memory. He wasn't the kind of dog who barked for attention. While others in the shelter wagged and jumped at visitors, Kilo simply watched. His eyes held stories no one asked about. He didn't chase toys or respond in new names. The handler said he was a quiet one, but none of them knew why. Then, one day a call came through. The shelter volunteer assigned him read the note aloud in disbelief. Final request. Inmate wishes to see former dog. Approved visitation. It was the kind of thing you'd expect from a movie, not a prison log. The day arrived. Kilo was groomed, his old collar adjusted. On the ride to the facility, he stared out the window, calm, as if knowing exactly where they were going. Inside the prison, staff lined the hallway, not out of duty but curiosity. The cell door opened, and the man stood still, waiting. Then it happened. The sound of claws on tile. A whine. A pause. And then Kilo ran. Not cautiously, not confused. With certainty, as if no time had passed at all. The man dropped to his knees. Kilo, the dog, leapt into his arms, tail beating like a drum, licking his face, circling, pressing against his chest. Neither of them spoke, but they didn't need to, because the silence was already full of everything they had once been, everything they still were. The guards waited, watching the reunion from a respectful distance. Some looked away. Others held their breath. No one expected what came next. After nearly an hour, the supervising officer cleared his throat and stepped forward. Time's up. The man nodded. He whispered to Kilo, brushing the dogs for one last time, preparing to let go. But Kilo didn't move. The guard tried to gently coax him back. Kilo growled, not viciously but protectively. He lowered his body, tail stiff, paws planted over the man's shoes as if shielding him from fate. More officers stepped in. The moment grew tense. But instead of force, something else happened. A nurse, quiet until now, stepped forward. Her voice barely rose above a whisper. "Just give them more time." The warden appeared, drawn by the unusual pause in routine. He watched from the end of the hall, eyes unreadable. Then, slowly, he turned away and disappeared without a word. They didn't separate the man and the dog that night. Kilo refused to leave, and the staff, hardened by years of death row procedure, softened. Blankets were brought. The visitation room lights dimmed. The man curled against the wall. Kilo curled around him. They fell asleep together, as they once had years ago, under bridges, in abandoned buildings, when they were both forgotten by the world. And in that sterile, lifeless space, something quietly remarkable took place. Humanity returned, not through speeches or protests, through a dog who simply wouldn't let go. By sunrise, a volunteer had taken a picture through the visitation window, not to exploit, but because the moment demanded to be remembered. A man on death row, curled on the floor, one hand buried in the fur of a dog who had never stopped waiting. That image found its way online. No caption, just his only request before execution, to see his dog. The internet did what the justice system had not. It listened. Within hours, the photo went viral. Thousands shared it. Journalists picked up the story. People who never gave a second thought to inmates or second chances paused. Because something about it, about the rawness, the loyalty, the unspoken grief, pulled at their hearts. Emails flooded the warden's office. Petitions formed. Advocates reached out, not to argue legal technicalities, but to say, this man, guilty or not, is still a soul. And the story reached the ears of those with power. A review board was called. A stay was issued. Days passed in tense silence. Then a decision arrived. The death sentence was commuted. Life without parole, not out of pity, but mercy. Not because of what he did, but because of who he was when no one was watching, and because someone watched. Not a lawyer, not a priest, a dog. Kilo didn't understand legal terms or court decisions. He only knew that the man was still here, and that was enough. He didn't walk free, but he lived, and in that life, something began to bloom. The prison transferred him to a facility with a rehabilitation program. There were no luxuries, no headlines anymore, just quiet labor, a cot, and a dog who refused to leave his side. Kilo was granted special permission to remain with him, an exception made not for fame, but for undeniable bond. Together, they joined a canine program where inmates helped care for abandoned and neglected dogs. The broken saving the broken. The man spoke little, but when he did, it was to calm a trembling puppy or guide a younger inmate through silence. His hands, once instruments of damage, now built dog beds, mixed feed, cleaned wounds. Time passed. Kilo aged. His step slowed. His muzzle grayed. One morning, as the man sat beside Kilo under the pale sunlight in the yard, a boy visiting on a school tour approached. "Is he yours?" the child asked. The man looked down at the dog, sleeping peacefully against his leg. He smiled soft and steady. "No," he replied. "I'm his." When Kilo passed months later, the prison held its first ever ceremony for an animal. Because everyone knew it wasn't the law that saved a man. It was loyalty. It was love. It was the kind of mercy only a dog could carry, all the way to the end.